What if the world laughs at someone, only because it hasn't heard their voice yet? The stage lights were too bright for a boy who grew up under dim street lamps. The floor beneath his worn shoes felt too smooth, too clean, too far from the dusty roads he knew. In that giant theater, filled with strangers and cameras, he looked smaller than ever. But small things sometimes carry the biggest storms inside. His name was Mateo Cruz, a 13-year-old boy from a quiet town in the Philippines. He was thin, soft-spoken, and shy, the kind of child people often overlooked. Yet behind his nervous eyes lived a deep love for old music, especially songs that felt older than his own life. Beside the stage curtain stood Liza, his mother. She was a laundry worker with tired hands and a gentle smile that never fully hid her worries. Strong, patient, and quietly brave, she had spent years believing in a dream she could not afford. Watching from afar was Mr. Reyes, Mateo's former music teacher. Calm and thoughtful, he had once noticed something others missed, a rare emotion in the boy's voice, something raw and honest. The audience inside the theater did not know their story. To them, Mateo was just another contestant. Just another face. Just another hopeful dream that would probably fade in minutes. Some people even smiled with doubt. Because what could a poor Filipino boy possibly bring to a stage where stars were born? Yet in his chest, his heart beat not with fear alone, but with a quiet promise. A promise built from long nights, empty pockets, and songs sung to the dark. And the biggest question of all waited in the silence before the music began. Could one voice be strong enough to turn laughter into tears? Mateo Cruz had always lived in the background of the world. Their home was a small, rented room near a noisy roadside, where jeepneys passed from morning until late at night. The walls were thin, the roof leaked during heavy rain, and space was so tight that every step had to be careful. Still, Mateo treated it like a palace, because it was the only place where his mother's tired smile felt at ease. He was a quiet boy, the kind teachers described as well-behaved, but rarely noticed beyond that. He sat at the back of classrooms, shoulders slightly bent, eyes often lowered. Not because he lacked thoughts, but because he carried too many of them. Mateo had a habit of humming when he was nervous. Soft, almost invisible sounds that slipped out while he washed dishes or folded clothes. Old melodies, older than him, songs he didn't fully understand but deeply felt. Every morning before school, he helped his mother hang wet laundry outside. His hands were small, but he worked carefully, like every shirt carried something important. Sometimes he stared at the sky a little longer than needed, as if imagining another life hidden behind the clouds. He owned only 2 school uniforms. One was slightly faded, the other had a tiny tear near the pocket that he always covered with his hand. These were small things, but to him, they felt heavy. Inside, Mateo lived between hope and doubt. He dreamed of singing on big stages, but fear often whispered louder. What if his voice wasn't enough? What if people laughed? Still, every night, when the world became quiet and the street noise faded, he sang softly to himself. Because in those moments, his voice was the only place where he felt brave. The dream of singing had always lived inside Mateo, but so did something heavier, the fear of being seen. At school, he was known as the quiet boy with the old shoes. Some classmates didn't mean harm, but their laughter still followed him when he tripped over words or stayed silent during group work. He learned early that being unnoticed hurt less than being judged. But the real weight in his heart came from home. His mother's cough had been getting worse over the past year. Long hours of washing clothes in cold water left her hands swollen and her body tired. Some nights, Mateo pretended to sleep while listening to her breathing, slow and strained in the dark. He wished he could trade places with her, carry the burden instead. Money was always short. There were days when dinner was just rice and salt. Mateo would say he wasn't hungry, even when his stomach felt hollow. Watching his mother pretend not to notice was a silent pain they both understood. Then came the moment that changed everything. A school event announced auditions for a talent program connected to a big international show. Mr. Reyes encouraged Mateo to try. But fear wrapped around him tightly. What if he failed? What if people laughed louder this time? The night before the audition, he stood outside under a flickering streetlight, singing softly to the empty road. His voice shook, not from the cold, but from the storm inside him. He wasn't just afraid of losing. He was afraid that if he didn't try, their life would never change. That his mother would keep getting weaker. That his dreams would stay trapped in the dark forever. For the first time, Mateo realized the real battle wasn't on a stage. The days after the audition felt longer than ever. Mateo returned to his usual routine, but something inside him had shifted. The fear was still there, sitting quietly in his chest, yet now it shared space with a fragile thread of courage. He had stepped forward once. That alone changed how he saw himself. Mornings were still filled with chores. The same bucket of water. The same line of laundry. But while his hands worked, his mind replayed the memory of standing alone in that school hall, singing with trembling breath. He had not run away. That thought became his small victory. At night, he practiced more seriously. Not loudly, not boldly, but with care. He paid attention to every note, every breath. Sometimes his voice cracked, and frustration burned behind his eyes. He would pause, close his eyes, and try again. Slowly, he learned something important. Singing was not about having a perfect voice. It was about carrying truth inside each word. The tiredness in his mother's face. The hunger he pretended not to feel. The silent hopes he never spoke about. All of it lived in his voice. One evening, he noticed his mother watching him from the doorway. Her expression was soft, almost surprised. Mateo felt shy and looked away, but inside, warmth spread through him. He was no longer singing only to hide. He was singing to be heard. Doubt still visited him, especially in quiet moments before sleep. But it no longer ruled him. Each hardship, each worry, had shaped something stronger in his heart, a quiet resilience. Mateo began to understand that his struggles were not chains. They were the reason his voice carried so much feeling. Not every powerful voice comes from a powerful life. Sometimes, the softest voices carry the deepest stories. Mateo's journey was never only about a stage, bright lights, or famous judges. It was about a boy who almost let fear decide his future. A boy who believed being small meant being unimportant. Yet life slowly showed him something different. Pain had shaped him, but it had not broken him. Every early morning chore, every quiet hunger, every night spent worrying about his mother had placed a quiet strength inside his heart. The struggles he once wished to escape had become the reason his voice felt real. People do not connect to perfection, they connect to truth. Mateo learned that courage is not loud. It does not shout or demand attention. Sometimes courage is just a small step forward while your hands are shaking. Sometimes it is singing even when you think no one will listen. And the world has a strange way of changing when someone chooses bravery over fear. Laughter can turn into silence. Doubt can turn into belief. Strangers can suddenly feel the weight of a story they never lived. All because one person decided not to hide anymore. The biggest lesson of Mateo's story is simple. Dreams do not belong only to the rich, the confident, or the lucky. Dreams belong to those who keep carrying hope, even on tired days. Even when life feels unfair. Even when the world looks away. Because a single honest voice, no matter how small it seems, can travel farther than anyone imagines. And sometimes, it can change more than just one life.